Hello there and welcome to World News Program coming to you live from Algiers. Let's get to the headlines. The horror in Gaza keeps escalating as Israeli occupation commits brutal massacres. Doctors Without Borders warns hunger is being weaponized, while UNRWA calls urgently for a ceasefire before it's too late. Also in our news, Smotrich's new settlement plan is sparking outrage worldwide. Palestinians and the international community warn it's a deliberate move to isolate Al-Quds, and the UN says it could end any chance for a two-state solution. Meanwhile, Sudan's leader El Burhan affirms no reconciliation without full liberation. In the meantime, the rapid support forces keep tightening their grip on al-Fashir, with the UN warning of a looming hunger crisis among besieged families. Also in our news, on the eve of the Alaska summit, Putin praises the US for sincere efforts to end the Ukraine conflict. Trump says a deal is possible, but only if a critical tripartite meeting happens, while admitting there is a real chance that talks could collapse. All this and more shortly. Well, hello again and welcome to the news. It's great to have you with us tonight. First up in our news, several Palestinians were killed and others injured in a series of Zionist airstrikes targeting various areas of the Gaza Strip since dawn on Thursday. According to medical sources in Gaza hospitals, the Israeli occupation forces carried out airstrikes targeting several areas of the Strip, killing 26 Palestinians and wounding many others with varying degrees of severity. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health in the Gaza Strip recorded 4 new deaths due to famine and malnutrition over the past 24 hours alone. The ministry reported in a statement on Thursday that the total number of victims of famine and malnutrition has risen now to 239 martyrs, including 106 children. For its part, Doctors Without Borders in Gaza said on Wednesday that the military food distribution plan in the Strip has turned hunger into a weapon that kills the starving Palestinians. Doctors Without Borders added that the US-run Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is supposed to help deliver aid, has become more of a death trap. They are describing the humanitarian situation in Gaza as absolutely catastrophic, with people suffering on a scale that's hard to imagine. In another reaction, the World Health Organization revealed that over 14,800 patients in Gaza urgently need life-saving medical care not available in the area. The WHO World Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus called for the immediate restoration of medical referral pathways from Gaza to the West Bank, including East al-Quds, before it's way too late. At the meantime, UNRWA confirmed that bombing and forced displacement continue in Gaza, adding that with limited electricity and fuel, there is no way to cope with the extreme heat. In a statement on Thursday, the agency stressed the need for a ceasefire, noting temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius, worsening an already dire situation amid water shortages and rising risk of dehydration. In another story, the Palestinian presidency spokesperson Nabil Abu Rudaini condemned Israel's plans to build 1,403 new settlement units in the E1 area between Al-Quds and Ma'ali Adumin, amid the ongoing war in Gaza and rising settler violence. He warned that these actions will only fuel further escalation and instability, holding the occupation's government fully responsible. He also linked the settlement move to Netanyahu's recent remarks about a so-called Greater Israel plan.
All settlement activity is rejected, condemned, and illegal under international law, particularly United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334, which affirms that all settlements in the West Bank, including East al-Quds and the Gaza Strip, are illegal. We hold the occupation government fully responsible for these dangerous actions, including this latest settlement announcement. which coincides with Netanyahu's statements yesterday regarding what is referred to as Great Israel.
For its part, the Palestinian Foreign Ministry strongly condemned Israel's plans to build thousands of new settlement units in Al-Quds, its surroundings, and Ariel in the central West Bank. The ministry said construction in the E1 area aims to destroy the possibility of a Palestinian state, fragment the West Bank, and facilitate its annexation through isolated, encircled areas.
The ministry views these allocations as an extension of crimes of genocide, displacement, and annexation, echoing Netanyahu's rhetoric regarding what he calls Greater Israel. While the ministry continues its efforts with states, the peoples, and components of the international community to expose the occupation's colonial and racist plans, it calls for genuine international intervention and the imposition of sanctions on the occupation to compel it to halt the implementation of its schemes and to comply with the international consensus on resolving the Palestinian issue, ending genocide, displacement, and annexation, and enabling our people to attain their right to self-determination and our state to exercise sovereignty over all the territories occupied since 1967, including East Al-Quds.
And on a similar note, Hamas condemned far-right Israeli Minister Smotrich's E1 settlement plan, calling it an attempt to sever ties between Ramallah and Bethlehem and isolate Al-Quds from its Palestinian surroundings. In a Thursday statement, Hamas said the plan to build over 3,400 settlement units is part of a broader effort to block the establishment of a Palestinian state.
Smotrich's announcement of his settlement plan known as E1, which includes the construction of more than 3,400 new settlement units in occupied Al-Quds, represents a dangerous step aimed at cutting the link between Ramallah and Beit Lahm, isolating Al-Quds from its Palestinian surroundings and preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state. This criminal plan exposes the true face of the Zionist government, an extremist colonial occupation that understands only the language of killing, genocide, displacement, and land confiscation.
And in an international reaction, UN spokesperson Stéphane Dujarric urged occupying Israel to cancel a settlement project that would split the occupied West Bank and isolate East Al-Quds. He warned Thursday that the plan threatens the two-state solution and violates international law.
Our position on settlements is clear. The Israeli settlements in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and the regime that's associated with these settlements go against international law. Settlements, to state the obvious, further entrench the occupation, put the prospect of a two-state solution even further away. And as you said, if this went ahead, and which we call on the Israeli government not to do, and we call them to reverse, to stop the advancement of this process.
And finally, we take you to a story of young Palestinian Omar Maleha, who uses his camera to expose Zionist settler crimes in the West Bank, highlighting the new Nakba and the threat of displacement under occupation forces, especially since the Gaza genocide began. Hossam Barkan tells us more.
In a land where the wounds of the first Nakba still bleed, 15-year-old Omar Malehat is living through a new one. In a time of forced displacement and home demolitions, his features tell the story of a homeland being stolen for the second time. He was forcibly displaced with his family from the Mughayr al-Dir community east of Ramallah 3 months ago, after repeated attacks by extremist settlers. Despite this, he insisted on staying, his weapon, the camera, to expose their crimes.
I document events and share them with the outside world, to international forums, and to both local and global institutions. We did this so people could see the reality and help improve the situation for our community. But there is no life for those who refuse to listen.
Mughayr al-Dir has been emptied of its people under the weight of settler gang assaults. Omar, along with dozens of Bedouin community, packed their belongings and were driven away, not knowing their destination, after a long ordeal with settler violence.
We used to keep our things in the barracks and bring the sheep when we were surprised by an ambush of settlers who attacked the people and started chasing them. They began beating them and they were shooting.
Unable to bear the settlers' terrorism, carried out under the eyes of occupation forces in Moghera al-Dir, he decided to document these attacks, which have intensified sharply since the Al-Aqsa flood, and which have pushed the residents of entire communities to leave, abandoning behind them memories of beautiful past.
I'm in Maghayr al-Dir, a place of dignity and honor. Right now, we have been humiliated. I mean, when a person is forced to leave their own land, they are certainly humiliated.
Daily terror has escalated since the genocide in Gaza began. The occupation has turned settlers into gangs committing crimes against Palestinians, leaving the West Bank wide open to their encroachment, with the occupation's full approval.
Elsewhere in the Middle East, the Syrian Foreign Ministry welcomed the UN investigation's findings on the coast events, which found no evidence of government-ordered crimes. The ministry praised the report's acknowledgement of government measures and said the recommendations offer a roadmap for stability and progress in Syria. In Syria still, the death toll from an ammunition depot explosion near Idlib, northwest Syria, has risen to 4, with 5 injured, according to Syria's health ministry, quoted by Sana news agency on Thursday. The blast caused panic among residents and thick smoke in the area. Moving on to Africa now, Sudan's Army Chief Abdel Fattah al-Burhan rejected any reconciliation without full liberation of Sudan, marking the military's centennial. He vowed to continue the battle for dignity against the Rapid Support Forces and emphasized the Army's role in preserving national unity.
We renew here our resolve that we will continue the battle of dignity, continue to defeat these rebellion and continue to reject compromise and reconciliation, no matter the cost. We will not betray the blood of our people. We will not betray the blood of our sons and brothers who sacrificed themselves in defense of their country. Greetings to you, my dear citizens. Greetings to you, officers, soldiers, and NCOs who represent these forces in their centenary year and in the history of their leadership by the Sudanese. This year marks 71 years. We're very proud to be part of this institution, and we're also proud to belong to this Sudanese people, the makers of civilization and history.
Al-Burhan also emphasized that the Sudanese armed forces are an extension of the civilization and glory of the Sudanese people and Sudan in general, stressing the importance of unity between the people and the army.
The glory of Sudan, the civilization of Sudan, and the history of Sudan. This history and this ancient glory were built by the Sudanese. The same Sudanese, the builders of this great civilization, are the same Sudanese who built the armed forces and the same Sudanese who have continuously supported the armed forces. Greetings to the Sudanese people, the creators of civilizations. Greetings to the Sudanese people, the funders of these forces. Their name is associated with the defense of Sudan. When the armed forces were established in 1925, unlike all other armies, they were not named after a king or anyone else. They were named the Sudan Defense Force. From there, the determination to build was launched, the determination to preserve the history of this nation.
Still with Sudan, the Sudanese government welcomed the UN Security Council's strong rejection of the formation of a parallel government in Sudan, calling it a direct threat to the country's unity and territorial integrity. The Foreign Ministry praised the international consensus reached against the malicious political project. The Darfur regional government said the Rapid Support Forces continue their violations and siege of Al-Fashir, ignoring UN calls. Governor Mini Menawi noted that RSF rejected the U.S. Secretary General's request for a one-week humanitarian ceasefire to allow aid into the city.
المجاعة والجوع بالذات.
Famine and hunger, especially in Al-Fashar area, which was besieged by the Rapid Support Forces for nearly 2 years, even the UN resolution issued to lift the siege in Al-Fashar, were rejected by Rapid Support Forces militias. One day, more than 4 or 5 weeks ago, the UN Secretary General contacted the chairman of the Sovereignty Council, Lieutenant General Burhan, and offered 1 week truce to allow the entry of humanitarian supplies. However, the Rapid Support Forces, of course, issued a statement and rejected this.
And in another topical development, the Kremlin announced the final preparations for the upcoming summit between Presidents Putin and Trump, with a full agenda agreed upon. Putin's aide Yuri Ushakov said the meeting will start with a private session followed by a broader delegation meeting. The main focus will be resolving the Ukrainian crisis. The summit is set for Friday in Alaska. For his part, Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the U.S. for its sincere efforts to resolve the Ukraine conflict. Speaking ahead of his summit with President Trump in Alaska, Putin said the U.S. administration is actively working to end the fighting.
Dear colleagues, good afternoon. I asked you to gather today in order to inform you about how the negotiation process on the Ukrainian crisis is going, how the bilateral negotiations with the Ukrainian delegation are going. One way or another, in general, many of those present know, of course. In general terms, I will tell you in more detail. That is the first thing. And secondly, I will tell you about the stage we are at with the current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis, and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict in order to create long-term conditions for peace both between countries and in Europe and in the world as a whole.
And on Thursday, President Trump said he believes Putin would reach a deal on the Ukraine war, noting sanctions threats likely pushed Moscow to agree to the meeting. Trump told Fox News any agreement would come from a trilateral meeting after his Alaska summit with Putin, but gave a 25% chance the talks could fail.
We have a meeting with President Putin tomorrow. I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not. I don't know that it's going to be very important. We're going to see what happens. And I think President Putin will make peace. I think President Zelensky will make peace. We'll see if they can get along. And if they can, it'll be great.
And for more on the high-stakes summit on the war in Ukraine, let's follow this report compiled to us by Marwa Belaïwer.
In Anchorage, where east meets west across the Bering Strait, Presidents Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin will meet on August 15, the first U.S.-Russia summit on American soil since 1988. The talks start with a private one-on-one, just the leaders and translators, before widening to their delegations and a joint press conference. Trump calls the meeting a listening exercise to gauge Putin's readiness for a ceasefire, warning of very severe consequences if talks fail. U.S. officials say the White House is open to discussing changes in land, remarks that have alarmed Kiev and European capitals wary of rewarding Russian aggression. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says any decision on his country's future without him is stillborn, rejecting Moscow's demands for Kiev to quit for Russian-annexed regions and drop its NATO bid. European leaders outlined 5 red lines: a ceasefire before talks, no recognition of Russian control, no concessions without Ukraine present, security guarantees for Kiev, and protection of Europe's strategic interests. The military backdrop is tense. Russian forces are advancing in Donbass, threatening fortified cities.
President
Putin is expected to offer economic incentives and sanctions relief in exchange for U.S. support for his proposals. If there is progress, Trump may invite both Putin and Zelensky to follow-up meeting. For now, the Alaska summit is a test of whether battlefield pressure can be turned into diplomacy or whether the war will grind into its third year.
Still in Europe, French citizens, intellectuals, and activists signed an open letter urging judicial authorities to investigate former Minister Noël Lenoir for racist, hateful remarks against Algerians in France, made on CNews last Friday. Published by L'Humanité, the letter calls on human rights bodies and French regulators to take official action against her. Elsewhere in Africa, the Moroccan occupation continues to exploit Sahrawi resources by announcing a new energy project in occupied Guerguerat under the guise of renewable energy and green economy. Yaqut al-Mukhtar, head of the Sahrawi Observatory for Natural Resources, expressed serious concern, saying the project aims to strengthen Morocco's occupation and expand infrastructure beyond internationally recognized borders.
Our organization is deeply concerned by the announcement from the occupying government regarding this project, which relies on hybrid production capacity combining solar energy and diesel, and which it promotes as a development investment. This project comes within Morocco's ongoing efforts to entrench its occupation of Western Sahara and expand its infrastructure in areas beyond its internationally recognized borders, a blatant and flagrant violation of international law and United Nations resolutions.
And on another African note, the 5+5 Joint Military Committee reaffirmed its commitment to reinforcing the ceasefire and ensuring the withdrawal of foreign forces and mercenaries to maintain security in Libya. The UN Special Envoy met the committee in Tunisia to discuss progress in implementing and sustaining the ceasefire agreement. And finally in our news, Germany is grappling with the effects of a severe drought that has hit agricultural production hard, especially grain crops. Record-breaking temperatures over recent months have been matched by a sharp decline in rainfall, creating challenging conditions for farmers across the country. Nabil Khazini tells us the details.
With a stubborn heat wave gripping much of Europe, Germany is experiencing another summer marked by drought. As summer temperatures climb above 30 degrees Celsius, Germany's farmers face an escalating challenge, a persistent drought that is no longer an occasional event, but a growing threat to the country's food security.
It
will be average, or rather slightly below average, because we had a lot of rainfall over a 2-week period, and we had the problem that we had very high temperatures during flowering. And when temperatures exceed 30 degrees Celsius during quinoa flowering, it doesn't produce as many grains as it could. So we will probably have an average to slightly below average yield.
Large parts of the country haven't seen rain for days, and in some areas, even weeks. This dry weather is already hurting crops. Experts say that earlier droughts have reduced the water in the soil, and if the rain doesn't fall soon, farmers could face big losses in their harvests.
In terms of yield, this year has been poor because the spring was simply too dry and too cold. That lasted until May. It was still very cold in early to mid-May, so there was no growth and no water, nothing. And then the intense heat came in June and lasted until July, and that's when it ripened. So we basically had dead fruit, so very poor yields. The quality is reasonably okay, I'd say, but the yields are poor this year. Compared to last year, I think it would be down by around 30 to 35%.
Germany and Southern Europe are in the grip of an ongoing heat wave, with temperatures soaring past 40 degrees Celsius. In the coming days, other regions are also expected to see similar extreme heat. But in Germany, the problem goes beyond just hot weather. The drought is no longer a passing challenge. It's become a complex crisis, touching everything from food security to economic stability and the health of ecosystems. Authorities are responding with short-term measures, but experts warn that the pace of action isn't fast enough and the vision isn't big enough. As the land lingers for rain, so too do those who depend on it, hoping this season's silence won't turn into a lasting echo.
Well, that concludes tonight's news for tonight. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.